Hello. Hello. Let's see. Are we good? Let's see here. Um, Testing one, two, three. Oh, hello. Brian Duggan. Yeah, I was trying to do the OBS, but uh, I couldn't get it to work. So we're just gonna do it through YouTube. I was gonna do the OBS so I can get a little bit of background music. Oh well. Hello, Milo May. Welcome, welcome. This is the Black Ponder, and this is a live stream. We're just celebrating. Let me see if I can adjust this. Hopefully, the levels are good, and you can hear me clearly enough. If not, just let me know. And yep, we will. I'll give it a little bit of time for maybe some other people want to roll in, but I'm not the type of person that cares too much about numbers. So if it's only a few people, that's fine too. Sounds good. Okay, so we have this giveaway that we're doing. The Divine Comedy. Woo. That's cool. One of them in this book, David Hume. Dialogues concerning natural religion. And another thing you have to excuse me is I just you know yeah, I had a cold, but now I'm at the tail end of that, so I might be coughing. So let me mute so I can get a good cough in. I hear it's going around. It's a, it's a virus or a bug, and it's in several of them, and it's going around. It's not just COVID. I don't think I had that one. It's just all types. But the reason why I prefer really beat up copies over nice ones. So I have the Divine Comedy already. This is one I got. I think I just found this somewhere on the street. I'm like, ooh, that's good. And it's taped, and it's got writing in it. I'm one of those weirdos that likes scruffed up books, preferably over new books. That's why I like writing in my books. And I love when I get a book and it's already people have written in it and stuff and marked it up. That's to me, I really like that. So if I got multiple copies, I'll just give away the nice one. And this one I accidentally bought too. I didn't realize I had the copy. So I'm like, okay, I'll just give it away. One of them. I'll give away the more nice one, the nicer one. But we'll do the giveaway in a few more minutes. And let me bring up questions. I always have like a little talk prepared just in case. Um, there's no questions, but there were. So that's cool. I'm just going to pull this up. Community tab. Okay, let me look at the comment. Click here. And then we will sort. Cool. Mhm. Hello, bread, butter, toast. All right, so now I already did the draw. I'll just let you know right now. You were the one that came up as the random winner. Bread, butter, toast, I believe. Yeah, you can. I did that random generator thing, and your name just came up. So that was cool. So congratulations, you won. But I read your message, and you were saying, "Oh, I already have what was it? The Divine Comedy." Uh, Was that the one? Yeah, you're like, I already have like 5 copies of the Divine Comedy, so but you can get the Hume. So I'll send you the Hume. So since you already had the Divine Comedy, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do another draw. So I did another draw, and it was somebody else. The initials is just some initials is JH. His avatar is a deer, so he's gonna get the Divine Comedy copy. So we got 2 winners this time. But thanks for showing up. Maybe I'll see him in the comments. If not, I'll reach out, and then you can send me your mailing address. You go to the I think you go to my channel, and then you go to about section, I think, the about tab. Yeah, then you click on view email address, and then you just with that email address, you just send me your mailing address, and I will send it to you. Thanks a lot for watching. Okay, and so I'll get to the questions because we got several questions, and that's cool. And then if you got even more questions, all you gotta do is comment them on the chat. Um, I see. I got the setting where they got top chat, and that's the one where they actually omit some. I want the live chat. I want to see everything. But before I go to the questions, I'll just give a little bit more opportunity for a few more people to come. I just want to give like a little talk, a little philosophy talk. Uh, I This is my favorite book. Oh yeah, this is actually my favorite book of all time. Walden. It also contains Civil Disobedience. It's by my philosopher that I really like, Thoreau. And one of the cool things about philosophy is like you don't just finish philosophical books and just be like, okay, that's it, I'm done. Right? No, you oftentimes go back to philosophy books and reread them, and that's fun. Is they're like little onions, you keep peeling them, and then you find more nuggets. And I do that with this book. This is a copy. I don't think they publish it in this copy anymore, but this one means a lot to me because it was in college, and we were assigned like a few pages, but I was like, I'll just read the whole book. So I just bought it used. But I think now they come out with a Penguin. This is a Penguin Classic, but I think the Penguin Classic edition is a different version. But one of the things I just want to share this right quick. Uh, it's on civil disobedience, which that civil disobedience is the inspiration for Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They used part of that the civil disobedience essay as part of their practice of going against unjust laws, and so that was a very powerful essay. And there is a part here that really stuck to me. I read it in school. This was the part that was assigned to us in school. It was university. Oh, it's actually community college. Here in the United States, we have community college, which is a very cheap version of college. But it, actually has about the same equal amount of education. It's just you only take a few years. You can't get a 4-year degree. You can only get up to a 2-year. They call it associate's degree. Just in case you were watching and you're not familiar with the American college system. But let me find you this quote. What was it? It was about it was a plank. It had to do with Oh, here it is. It is part of. So it's a civil disobedience essay, and yeah, I'll just read this line right here. He says, Thoreau says, if I have unjustly wrested a plank from a drowning man, I must restore it to him, though I drown myself. This will be inconvenient, but he that would save his life in such a case shall lose it. Right? Yeah, community college is awesome. Right. And we talked about that quote in school in the class. It was like philosophy 101. It's kind of one of the parts of my life where I fell in love with philosophy because I was sticking in the college system, the university system. You have to take general courses to get your to get your degree, and so you got sometimes you might study computer science, but you still have to take just general courses. And philosophy 101 is just one of those courses a lot of people just take to just graduate, just to fulfill that general requirement. So I did that, but I was like, man, I really like what's being said here. And yeah, we talked about that where it's like, imagine if you're like in the middle of the ocean and you're drowning, right? I mean, you're drowning, and there's another person next to you, and you got a plank, like a big ass plank, but it only can support one person. So what do you do, right? Like, our society is, well, you just got to wrestle the guy until or the person until you win out. The only one person can survive, or maybe you sacrifice yourself, and you're like, I'm not doing this. Uh, yeah, that's the Titanic scenario that I remember. There was this recently online. There's this whole debate about it. Well, actually, the plank could support Jack and Rose. I think those are the two. Right. If they, it's kind of it's phony, right? They could have just both survived if they put on a plank. But then I think they got a specialist or some sort of like wood expert or whatever, or some architecture person came in and said, no, actually, that wooden thing would only be able to support one person. So yeah, only one person could have survived. So that put a rest to that. Um, but in but the situation in the book is the thought experiment is like it's somebody you don't know, and only one of you can survive. What do you do? Right? What's the best thing to do? And Thoreau was a transcendentalist, and he was like, well, what's more important, to survive or there's like physical survival, and then there's like spiritual survival, right? And then we really talked about it, and we were like, what's even better is not only should the next the stereotypical answer would be, oh, you just sacrifice yourself, right? But I would even take it a step further with transcendentalism, which is what the philosophical school of thought Thoreau was about. It is like, no, what you need to do is you both of you need to like figure out a way to survive. For both you both should be trying to figure that out. But right, but the thing is, like, well, you what if that's not possible? What if you both are going to die? And then so the transcendentalist would say, well, I guess both of you, it's better for you both to die, fighting to try and figure out a way for you both to survive, rather than either one of you dying. And so what's that about? Right. Well, that's about like understanding, like, well, there's something that's more important than physical survival. There's like a kind of spiritual um, awareness, right? Where it's like, you're fighting for each other's survival. Um, that's a more that's kind of like a kind of more important survival, even though you both will die physically, but spiritually, you'll become uh, alive, right? Because imagine if you died, right? If the other person died and you survived, then you have to deal with the trauma of like thinking about how, oh, my life is all about this person that sacrificed themselves. And somebody can take, you can talk that through and say like, well, I'm going to live the best life that I can because the other person sacrificed themselves for me. uh, but I would say the transcendentalist argument would be like, um, you know is the top priority to survive in this physical world, or is the top priority, that kind of relationship that we can have with each other that will transcend physical survival? Yeah, it's very interesting, and I we talked about that, how it's like, what's the most important thing, survival physically, or like building a relationship between each other through that one moment, right? And with transcendentalism, you have to adopt a kind of belief in the spiritual, where like a lot that loses a lot of people, where it's like, well, I don't believe in the spirit or the soul or like anything beyond the physical, so that's irrelevant to me. Uh, so that's kind of like an axiom, or like a premise already. But I'm the type of person that's like, yeah, I like that idea of like, there's things that are more important than just like physical survival. Uh, and things that kind of like transcend beyond uh, material the material world, and that's the transcendentalism, right? The whole idea of transcendentalism. And so Thoreau gets into that a lot, about how we're all just about like surviving, and so we go into this survival instinct, and then this dog eat dog world scenario, and you know it's more important that we figure out ways to survive. And it's like, well, is that really the most important thing? Right? Or are there things more important than just that kind of that drive to survive? Right. Uh, yeah. Right. That's what transcendentalism steps in. It's like, no, there are actually more important things than that we need to think about. It's just fascinating. Uh, so I just wanted to share with you that. And Milo May says, this reminds me of Zizek's example of coffee without the cream. If you have heard of that, no, I haven't. But okay, yeah, it's definitely not a new idea. It's definitely you kind of get it's kind of spiritual, gets into spiritualism, not necessarily religious. But I will go ahead and start with some of these questions. Where is it at? Oh, did I? Yeah, let me go back. Here we go. All right. Sort by newest. Okay, let's see here. Okay, we got a lot of congratulations. Happy New Year. That's great. Um, we got some questions here from Connecticut. Bolt Man. Happy New Year. Thanks for all the great content this year. I love your channel. That's nice to hear. Thanks for watching. I'm interested in participating. I'm also curious of three things. Do you think Nietzsche was correct in his death of God assertion? And do you have any favorite prescriptions for dealing with the philosophical dilemma this sets forth for modern people? Okay, let's do that first. But let me cough at the tail end of a cold. Mute. Sorry. Okay, do I think Nietzsche's correct in God of Death is no. I've mentioned this in other videos too. Like the gay science, I think I did a video on that where he says, I think the gay science is where Nietzsche first mentions that whole God is dead. And I understand the, because some people will say like, well, you're misinterpreting what he's saying. He's not actually saying God is dead. What he's saying is that uh, society, like the notion that God is dead, is no longer like an absurd notion. Like you can say you don't have to have belief in God, and you won't be looked at as a crazy person. As like, you know, back when society wasn't as developed or technically advanced, that saying something like that was a bit more controversial. Now it's not controversial. You can be, atheism is not like a controversial position. That's what Nietzsche is saying when he says God is dead. Atheism or a lack of belief in God is a believable, realistic option, right? Uh, More along those lines, and therefore there's all these consequences, and like we can live in a godless society, and what are all the heavy implications of that. But I kind of, he's saying more than that, but I think he's kind of overblowing it, or he's saying God is dead still, because God obviously is not dead, even in that sense, right? Of like, because still, like, most human beings on planet Earth believe in a deity, right? Some kind of God, right? Uh, most human beings believe in a God, right? Even though secularism is on the rise, atheism is on the rise, agnosticism is on the rise. Sure, that's true. But most people still subscribe to a religion. And so there's that. But also, like, religion still plays a critical role in society. It's very influential, for better or worse, right? Right. You know, so I'm saying, like, even if you don't believe in God, people who believe in God affect people who don't believe in God profoundly. Right. So in that way, God is definitely not dead. For example, recently in the United States, they overturned the Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade decision, which is a decision that made it, uh, legal to have an abortion throughout all the states. But now, like, that's been overturned. So in some states, lots of states now, abortion is illegal in almost every instance. Like the state I live in, Tennessee, abortion is illegal, right? What the reason why that's happened is it's religious, right? The people who believe in God, there are people who believe in God who believe God doesn't want abortion, and therefore they have come together and and use their power to influence society. So even if you don't believe in God, right? If you want to have an abortion in Tennessee, it is not likely not going to happen. So in that way, God is not dead. Right? God is still very, very much alive, right? In that, for better or worse. I don't support. I'm very, I'm all about supporting access to abortion, affordable, safe, uh, you know, um, easy, access to abortion. I think that's healthcare, and that's good. But religion is influences society profoundly, and it influences people who don't believe in God. Like, so you can't. I would argue, like, you can't walk around and say God is dead, because God obviously is not dead. Whether you believe in God or not, God is very much alive in our society. So I think Nietzsche is wrong in that assertion. And then what's going on here in the chats? Happy New Year. You make me buy a bunch of books per year. Thanks a lot. Okay. Hello, G1RA. Don't mean to send you me, I hope I'm not messing up your budget too much. But yeah, it's good. Reading is great. And Bread Butter Toast says, just finished Gay Science a month ago and actually uh thus spoke there Zarathustra 5 minutes before the live stream. Okay. Yep. And then you're saying, I agree. The majority of society, God is not dead. I do think he also specifies that a majority of society is not aware of it in aphorism, mostly just philosophers. Oh, is that what Nietzsche is saying? Like, only philosophers? And somebody says, "Do you have the bacon?" Whatever that's supposed to be. Uh, well, if he's saying like mostly people aren't aware that God is not dead, and it's only really philosophers, then if that's the case, then is God really dead? If like people aren't aware, I don't know. I don't. That doesn't make any sense to me, but maybe it makes sense. So the question is, do you have any favorite prescriptions for dealing with the philosophical dilemma? Uh, well, I don't think God is dead in our society. But I do think we have a dilemma because I don't. I'm a strong believer in separation of church and state. Uh, I wholeheartedly believe that. I mean, that is in the United States Constitution, separation of church and state. There, but that doesn't exist in America at all. There is no separation of church and state, which is um, bad, right? So I would say, what's the prescription for that? More religious people like myself need to step up and be like, okay, this is not cool, right? You can't enforce like I believe in God, but you can't like enforce that belief onto others, right? That's just not cool. God wouldn't want that. God gives us free will, and He wants us to use. Everybody should be free to believe what they want, as long as everybody is able to believe they want freely and not infringe on other people's right to believe. So that will be my prescription for that dilemma. That the dilemma that God is not dead, right? Right, which has its own consequences. And he says, "Are you a believer in God?" Yep, I am. Of course, it could be any conception of the God idea. Well, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. I grew up in the church, born and raised, Lutheran denomination. So yeah, I do believe in God, but I think, like I'm saying, it's important that more people who believe in God, don't shy away from this topic, and and kind of call out when religion kind of infringes on people's rights, and say like, okay, that this enough is enough, right? And you're misinterpreting, um, the Bible or religion, or your interpretation is obsolete, right? Right, is antiquated, and we need to like mature and develop, you know, and like kind of more consider modern times and try to adopt the religion to like the modern era. Yeah, I think more religious people need to like step up and speak out, right? And stop with this whole like, I don't talk about politics, I don't talk about religion. That just needs to stop. Right, we need to start talking about this because whether you want to talk about it or not, it's going to affect you, period. Even if you don't believe in religion, or if you're not political, oh well, it's still going to affect you, so you might as well get involved. Because in one way or another it's going to affect you. And then the third question, he's Connecticut bald man says, do you think Western civilization is currently in decline? Ooh, and if so, what outcomes do you expect? Do I think Western civilization is currently in decline, as opposed to what, the rest of civilization? Oh, so Eastern civilization is not in decline? Only West. Or I wouldn't, like, first of all, I wouldn't, like, separate the 2 or make, distinguish between Western. Well, I don't even know kinda what that means. Western civilization, you're talking about, like, civilization based off of, European colonialism? Like, Europe, the Americas, Australia, that kind of Western, so is that in decline? No, I don't think it's a decline. I think civilization has problems, absolutely. It's always had problems. It's not in decline, though, but we definitely got some problems, Western civilization, like, white supremacy or patriarchy or, late stage capitalism. Like, those are some major problems of not just Western civilization, just civilization, period, that we need to address. But that's always been there. I mean, there's no decline, right? I mean, that's always been there. Okay, let's look at the chat. Uh, Bread butter toast. Do you have any Christian philosophers you find compelling, or any favorite arguments in favor of Christianity? Sure. Like, Saint uh, Augustine. That's a great philosopher, theologian. What's another one? Thomas Aquinas. That's a great Christian philosopher. Those are 2 powerhouse Christian philosophers. I think C.S. Lewis is pretty cool too. I mean, all of these people, particularly C.S. Lewis, he kind of has a few flaws, but some of his stuff is really nice. I did some videos on C.S. Lewis. He's pretty cool, and also like, um, the theological work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which is he has some. There's a lot of philosophy in that. That's some great, because Dr. King, he also he has a lot of written work as well. And so one day I'm gonna make videos about his stuff. Do I have the book around? Oh, here it is. This is a quite popular book. A Testament of Hope, right? It's just a collection of all his speeches and writings. Uh, Check that out. I mean, this is some Christian philosophy here. I mean, this is some compelling Christian argumentation, and this is a guy that fought. He was a minister, and he fought society, the unjust laws, uh, society through Christian practice. So yeah, that's quite a few. Milo May, I think Nietzsche would have viewed the Soviet Union and the Nazi Party as the result of the death of God. Really? Uh, think so? There's this misconception that Nietzsche was, anti-Semitic, which I don't think is true. It's his sister who had anti-Semitic ideas was, kind of like came out with some anthology where that kind of put a lot of her ideas into Nietzsche's work, and so that's where that comes from. But Nietzsche oftentimes criticized, the Nazis and anti-Semites. But did he? Was that part of his? Is that in alignment with God is dead because of that? Um, I don't know. I don't know if that even relates to his critique of anti-Semitism. It might. I'm a Reformed Christian, basically the same. Okay, cool. Oh, hello. Why? How do you pronounce? Uh, why? Why row or we row? Hello. by the way, definitely interested in the giveaway. So we already did the giveaway, and we already announced the winners. It was one of them is here or was here, a bread butter toast, but he only wanted one book, so I did it again. It was JH. But thanks for entering. But yeah, we already did the drawing. Okay, have you read Henry uh, Nouwen or Nowen or Newen? No, I have not. Reaching out. Okay, but I will look. I will put add that person to my queue. Dutch priest. All right, I'll check them out. Okay, what's going on? What about Lime Nets? I'm not sure. I haven't. That's somebody I haven't really read that much, so I have to. But I know he's quite popular. So yeah, I don't have much opinion about him yet because I haven't read him much. But that's I'll definitely get to that person soon, or not soon, but eventually. How do you avoid getting burnt out on philosophy? I don't. That's like saying to me, that's like saying, how do I get burnt out from eating food? Right. It's just I love philosophy so much. It's just I can't get enough of it. Yeah. It's just I'm just very, very interested in philosophy. So that's really hard. I'm sure I probably can you can overdo anything. But I'm sure if I overdo it, but I've never had that experience getting over blown with philosophy. So how do I avoid? I don't know. I never had that issue before. Yeah. One of the cool things about philosophy is that you can kind of have you can sometimes I burnt out other people by talking to them about philosophy. Like, could we stop getting so deep? So, but one of the cool things about the philosophy is that you can kind of just have thoughts in your head. But I guess you could also have other hobbies. Right. I do all types of other stuff as well. And thoughts on Kierkegaard? Yeah, Kierkegaard's great. I've done several videos on Kierkegaard. He's another Christian philosopher. That's a great one to check out. Fear and oh yeah, lots of them. Fear and Trembling, and also The Sickness Unto Death. That's another great philosophical Christian philosophical text. Check that out. How to get motivated in reading philosophy in an age of science. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting the whole like science versus philosophy, or like this idea that science nullifies or cancels out philosophy, as if like, oh, science is so advanced, we don't need philosophy anymore. And lots of people think that. Stephen Hawking, he believed that too. He's like, oh, we don't need philosophy anymore because we have science, which I don't understand. Because science is just like it's. I mean, you can get philosophical with science. I mean, that's called the philosophy of science. It's a whole field. I've done videos on that. But science just explains like observations. It just explains things, but it doesn't really explain. It doesn't go into like the meaning behind stuff, right? So I don't know how modern science cannot motivate you to study philosophy. I would think like if anything, well, I guess it depends. I was gonna say if anything, it would motivate you, but maybe some people just aren't interested at all in philosophy. So uh, and they're just like, I only care about science. So I don't know. Please add me to the list. Here is to be have we go. Oh, okay. So see ya. G1RA. Peace out. Yeah, you you are added to the list already, but we already did the drawing. And we had the winners, which was not you, unfortunately, but we can only have so many winners. Martin Luther King was very interesting. Yes, he's a very interesting individual, and he is more than just like his "I Have a Dream" speech and his. I mean, he is a lot about him. Like he wrote a lot, and you can definitely get into that. That's cool. Okay, so there's some other recommendations for Christian philosophers. Annalyn Alvine Lifers. Good morning. Good morning. Anti-Semitism is unfortunately par for the course when reading old European texts, same as anti-blackness. Sometimes it's true. Um, yeah, sometimes. Okay. Yeah, I would like to keep up with chat first before I go on to the other questions. Okay, well, it's like, oh, okay, I mispronounced it. So is that's Polynesian. So WH makes an F sound, and I like the letter E. So Firo, Firo, is that how you say? Thoughts of Atlas Shrugged by Rand. I will definitely. She's not a priority, uh, but I will absolutely do videos on Ayn Rand eventually. Ayn Rand, I think, is a very intelligent person, intelligent philosopher. I strongly disagree with her philosophy, but she is very intelligent. Um, it's interesting. My my wife read some Ayn Rand books, and she was like, "Wow, that she's a good writer, but she's got horrible ideas. Horrible ideas in the sense that they're just wrong, but they're constructed in very intelligent ways." You know, so yeah, it's interesting because um, you can be very intelligent and come up with very intelligent arguments that are just like wrong, right? In my opinion, I would even go further and say, well, it's kind of beyond opinion, but they're still smart. So Atlas Shrug, I will definitely do a video on that in some of her other works as well, because I do think that she's quite an intelligent philosopher. I just feel like her ideas are incorrect. A worst and best part about philosophy is the endless amount of books to read. I want to read so much, but I am the slowest reader alive. I'm also a very slow reader, which is I like being a slow reader. Being a slow reader, it's easy to remember stuff when you're a slow reader. Some people read super fast, but they forget like everything they read or almost everything. They'll read something and they won't even remember what they read, right? Which is like, wow, I don't want to do that. But you can't read everything, and you just got to make a priority. Like, what do you want to read? And sometimes you do have to just kind of say, like, you know what, I'm just gonna read this, even though I don't. Um, it might be different from what I want to read. Let me just go. I do that sometimes. It's like, let me just read something different. See, even though I have so many things. And having a YouTube channel doesn't help, right? Because everybody's recommending you everything. So the list just keeps getting higher and higher. Uh, but I gotta be decisive. Science is grounded in on philosophy. Uh, yeah, like back in the day, there was no separation between philosophy and science. They were the same field, right? When philosophies first started, it was science and philosophy were kind of the same thing, but that now they're quite different. Kind of like how there was alchemy, and then from alchemy developed chemistry, right? Which was like kind of the more scientific um, application of like alchemy, which is more a pseudoscience. How would you separate a science from philosophy, like linguistics and sociology? Well, I could see a separation. uh, because science is all about the scientific method of experimentation through observation and being able to prove your observations through experimentation and like actual physical observation. And there's a whole method to it, and peer review is part of that, whereas philosophy is not. Like metaphysics, for instance, that's philosophy. And But then metaphysics is not science. It's like this whole debate right now in the science world, which is I find fascinating, about string theory and like this theory about multi dimensions, like extra dimensions. Like there's actually 11 dimensions, or like there are smaller uh, particles than quarks. They're called strings, right? And there's these scientists who are really into that, but there's these other scientists who are like, you people are not scientists because the you're talking about these objects that are impossible to experiment on because they were either really small, or you literally say like this is beyond what human beings can like interact with. And science is only part of it only deals with stuff that we can physically interact with. So string theory and this higher dimensional stuff, that's just pseudoscience is what a lot of the scientists so there's this debate where, but then you have string theorists and like people who study that kind of like extra dimension stuff who are they say no, this is actually legitimately science. So there's that whole debate. This is quite fascinating. Okay, Einstein said philosophy is very important. It is quite important because I feel philosophy is important because you gotta understand the meaning of things. You gotta, I don't know. I think it's important to know why you do the things that you do, which people don't really ask. They kind of just do. They just go through the motions, and that could be sometimes that could be dangerous. You just go through the motions and you don't question. Wait a minute, is what I'm doing actually correct or moral or or right? Or am I just like doing it just cause? You too. That's philosophy is about that, where it's like, are you just doing it just cause, or are you doing it because you actually feel like it's something that you should do? Right. Six shirt, yeah. Ninja Turtles. All about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm all about the 80s, early 90s. Born in the 80s, raised in the 90s. 80s 80s baby, 90s made me. I mean, yeah, I love Ninja Turtles. They jump to Malcolm X. I just my let me move right quick and show you this book that my wife. Oh, I'm plugged in. Let me unplug right quick. My wife got me. Where is it at? I thought I put it here. I guess I didn't. She got me this Malcolm X book. Oh, that's too bad. I can't find it. It's like it just came out and it's like won the Pulitzer Prize. I'm looking at my shelf here. Why can't I see? I thought it was here. That's too bad. Well, I have this book, which is great. Oh, well, I can't find it. I'll look it up right quick. Put it in the chat. Uh, Malcolm X biography, Pulitzer. It's called oh, The Dead Are Rising. Yep, that's it. Thrift books. Yeah, I think that came out last year. It's called The Dead Are Arising. Malcolm A new Malcolm X biography, which is really Dope. Definitely looking forward to reading that, and it goes more in depth with his philosophy. I might actually do a video on that one once I finish reading it. But here's another one. They're just coming out with this Frederick Douglass biography, and he has a lot of philosophy too. Now, both Malcolm X has an autobiography, and Frederick Douglass has an autobiography. But despite that, you still don't have all the information about their life, right? Or how could you? How could you encompass entire person's life in just one book? You can't. And their influence, and so they're coming out, and I'm noticing this is like a reawakening of like a lot of these influential social justice activists. Right? They're coming out with these biographies and re-examining because social justice activism is a resurgence happening right now, and there's like a counter resurgence to that too. Like the people criticize the woke movement, but so we're re-examining social activism and kind of making connections, which is great. And then what's going on here? Okay, let's see. Yeah, the feminist text you talked about. Yeah, I'm glad. Like that's another one of the things I'm actually kind of delighted about is a lot of people I oftentimes get messages where people will say, your videos really made me re-examine what feminism is. I thought feminism was just this angry woman rant thing, but it's a lot deeper than that. Right? The problem is like we have this really surface level idea of what feminism is because there's you see like a few feminists online who are they do all these rants and shit, and it's like that's only like a few feminists that are very popular because that's the perception that's kind of pushed forward, but you don't see the really in-depth and deeply philosophical feminism. You got to kind of search for that. So I'm glad that's the case. uh where well, hello other people. Natural element buckle, hello. Where do you say you wanted me to reach out to? Oh, my email. You just go to uh the channel, you go to the my channel, and then you go to the about tab, and then you click on this button, view email or something like that, and it'll show you the email, and then you can just send your mailing address to that email rather than telling their story objectively. I can't believe I don't have. Where did I put that book? Oh, I'm on. I'll look in the other tab. Sword. It was here. I guess not. Okay, 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 okay. I won't fixate on it. All right, more questions. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. One of the most. Okay, you got some questions. Bread, butter, toast. What philosophical questions are you most undecided, split on? Do I have any philosophical questions which I'm undecided or split on? I don't think I have any of those where it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm a very decisive person. So I can't really think of like a question that's like I don't know. I don't think I have one. I know, right? Maybe she's borrowing it. Your wife saying you lose the book. That's weird. Oh, here it is. Aha. This is what I was talking about. The Dead Are Rising, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. What when I wanted to read it, it didn't have that. That's a journalism prize, top journalism work of the year. The Dead Are Right. Yeah, this is gonna be some good shit, man. Because it's examining his life through like the social activism that he did, and it's talking about like all the 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 secret of like the CIA and the FBI and like a lot of like government uh, was against him and the surveillance that he had to deal with and how and it's making ties from that to today because we're like in the surveillance state with social media and you know internet corporations selling your private data and surveilling and how that's happening that kind of connection that's going on. Yeah, so it's like this connection between social activism and like the government surveillance and how the government kind of like is kind of acting against social activism and making that connection today. So it's like it's bringing together or is tying like old school social activism from like the 60s and 70s and like saying, look, it's the same. We're dealing with this today, right? This isn't something that we got over or like when Dr. King died, racism ended, or when Malcolm X, happened, when he was assassinated, he did all this. Like, we're still in this fight, and it's very similar. It is so it's making a lot of connections. I like it when um, you know, history is very important, and you can learn a lot from history, and you can learn a lot about today, right, from history. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, don't talk about that's the past. The past is the past." But you can learn so much about the state of affairs today through learning about history, right? And that's what that book does. So I'm very excited. So what? Let's see the other questions. Which philosopher do you believe is the most overrated? Uh, um, I hate to say it, but like Jordan Peterson, who I would say is a philosopher. He's just a very bad philosopher, but I guess he's kind of like a philosopher. Like down the road, he probably won't be remembered. So I'm trying to think of like a philosopher that's going to stand the test of time, but is still like very overrated. Uh, but yeah, Peterson is definitely super overrated, for sure. But he's not going to stand the test of time. Uh, I guess I want to say Marquis de Sade. I think that's how you say it. Marquis de Sade. No. Oh yeah, it is. The French philosopher de Sade, who was all about. He wrote a lot of those sexually explicit books. What was the one? The sodomy book. Let me see. I actually read some of those at in school too. Bibliography. What was his most famous work? Justine was one, but what was the one that was turned into a movie? I think it was. I'm just looking it up right quick. What's this? Oh yeah, 120 Days of Sodom. Yeah, that's it. That's like a French film, I think. He's pretty overrated, I think. A lot of people will read him and they'll be like, "Yeah, he's like pushing the boundaries. He's he's examining you know passions and drives." And some people will even say like, and it's fair. And I'm not gonna diss anybody that's into him. Some people will say like, he's actually kind of like a little feminist because he's like examining, which I don't know about that, but but he's like examining female desire and like how female sexuality can be the liberating in a sense, and sexuality is like fluid, and he talks, and honestly, it's just like, I read some of his stuff, and it's like, okay, this is just basically porno, and and so I know some people will be like, no, it's not porno. That's a very surface level, but I mean, he's saying a few interesting things, but nothing like too groundbreaking, in my opinion. And I think if you are into that kind of philosophy of like sexuality and the dimensions, how sexuality is multidimensional, and like you know the passions as it relates to sexuality, and how that influences human uh, nature. There's other more interesting and more, I would say, uh, developed more philosophers who have more developed philosophies in that regard that you can check out. I think Saad's kind of overrated in my opinion. But Saad, I mentioned him because he stands the test of time. Like you know, 100 years from now, 500 will still be people will still bring up that guy. So he's pretty overrated. Um, what was one book that really changed your mind this year? Changed my mind. Changed my mind. Was my mind changed? I don't think any book changed my mind. I just think the books I've read just reiterated things that I've already thought, and be like, yeah, yeah. I haven't read anything that changed my mind. I'll be honest with you. Let me look at my the books I've read. I don't even have a Goodreads. I just everybody's telling me you should get Goodreads. I just use YouTube. uh, let's see, philosophy. Okay, like, I'm just looking through these books. Yeah, I don't think any of them changed my mind. Let me plug in my PC. Battery don't go dead. Okay, let's go back to the chat. Yeah. Peterson, he and misinterprets a lot of stuff. So much of my Yeah, right, right. Uh, much of your indigenous identity is based on history that informs the now. Right. Can you recommend books by any ancient African philosophers? Um, I just saw there's this channel I follow. I don't know if they mention any ancient African philosophers, but there's this channel that's really, really good, and it's not o- underrated because it's got extreme amount of subscribers. It's called Closer to Truth, and I was watching Closer to Truth back when it was on PBS when they before they even had YouTube. Right? I can't find it, but it is a great philosophy channel. Like I have DVDs of that. Back when they were used to do that. Now they don't do that anymore. They just do, but they did a series, a philosophy of religion series. It's awesome. And then they did a video specifically on philosophy of African religions, and they had an African philosopher on the channel talking to me, and it was a very good. I'm trying to see if I can find that. Yeah, Global Philosophy of Religion Project. It was awesome. I'll just put that in the chat if I can find it. And then I think you might it'll be great. You can that's a good starting point there. Share. Religion. This is philosophy of religion. So philosophy of African religions. That might be a good starting point. I'll put that in the chat. African. You're like, you don't know if JP is overrated. Is he a gateway though? I don't know. I don't know. He's very problematic in my opinion. Because and then I think if you use him as a gateway into philosophy, that's very problematic. Right. A gateway to philosophy would be like taking an intro to philosophy college course. That's a good gateway. But somebody like him, that's kind of the danger of him, right? Because you start getting all these wrong ass ideas from the get go, and then you got to kind of climb yourself out of that. Kind of dig yourself into a hole starting with him. That's why I think that's one of the reasons why he's overrated because people are like, "Oh, he's a great way to start." Like, no, he's actually a horrible way to start philosophy. So I don't know. I have not read Francis Fukuyama. Oh, or maybe I have. Let me check. Oh no, no. Okay, I'm thinking about somebody else. Nope, I have not. Okay, okay. So that's a good. Put that on my list. Just put that on my queue. Political scientist. Uh huh. Yeah, we could talk about that. But the problem so you're saying Peterson gives very basic and conservative points, but they're not. It's not just basic, right? Is destructive. I mean, it'll be different if he was just like saying just very basic stuff, right? If he was just saying very basic, like if it's like, oh, okay, this guy's just very surface level. It'll be different if that was the only thing that was his problem. I'd be like, okay, you can. Then he would be a good gateway. But he'll say stuff like, "Oh, rape is not really that bad of a thing." He'll say things like that, or like, it's actually okay to hit your kid sometimes." Things like that. He'll say, or like, it's this whole like alternative genders there's a guy the transgender and that's not really a thing, that kind of stuff. When he starts veering into that, that's when it's like, okay, you got problems. you know that it's dangerous because then the problem is people say like, oh, that's just basic that's actually no, that's not basic, that's damaging. Right. Like, ideas are very powerful, right? And the wrong ideas can be very destructive. That's the problem. So I don't know. I'm not as dismissive of him. I know he's from a long line of that kind of thinking. Like he's not new, but just the way he's so popular and the way he's like, people just he says these things and it's like, oh, that's just like it is. It's like, no, actually, we gotta call. That's what I'm saying. Like, we gotta call it out for what it is. Just like when I was talking about Christianity, more Christians need to be like, no, actually, that's actually pretty fucked up. The fact that they're using Christianity to make abortion illegal, that's fucked up. And more people who believe in Christianity need to say that. Likewise, you hear Jordan Peterson talk, and it's like, oh, he's just saying, no, you got to say, like, no, that's actually pretty fucked up what he's saying. It's pretty, like, that's pretty dangerous. And we shouldn't. be letting him just say that, 'cause it's quite damn it, and just be okay with that, you know? That's all I'm saying, that's all. Yeah. Okay, so he was your gateway. That's cool. I'm glad you, matured out of him. Uh, Fukuyama, one of his recent book I didn't. Okay, I'll check him out. How do you see philosophy surviving the threat to free thinking? How do you see philosophy surviving the threat to free thinking? I mean, is there a threat to free thinking right now? Not where I'm at. What do you mean? Like, yeah, I know, like, books are being banned and stuff, but I mean, we still relatively can basically read anything we want. I'm sure that's not the case in many countries. Like, here in the United States of America, thank goodness we still have kind of free thinking. I mean, you might get like, you know, you might get your Twitter post censored or your Facebook post, but you can still say. I mean, I say all types of stuff online, and I could freely. So I don't know if that's really a threat. So philosophy is, I think nowadays is, we could be more philosophical than ever. Like we can, you know, that's kind of the beauty of today. I know there is a threat to free thinking today, but we still have relatively some allowance. It's not as bad as like back in like for example when slavery was legal in the United States, and it was illegal for a slave to read. Punishable by death or torture. It's not that bad. So I think it's fine. But yeah, I think how do we fight that threat? We got to keep speaking freely. Like I was saying, you got to with Peterson when he says stuff like rape isn't that bad. You got to say like no, actually that's a horrible thing to say. you know, uh, you got to speak freely. That's how you fight restrictions to thinking. Is freely speaking. Let's see. I think there's something in philosophy that we understand is just in the realm of philosophy. Is this? He tries to apply it to real life, which doesn't always make sense. Okay, let's see if there's anything. But going onto political platforms and promoting the idea onto voters is well. So, and then you're saying social media censorship is on all the time high. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's true. And journalists are getting banned. So yeah, so that's legit. But I personally like I'm just thinking about me personally. I can still post basically anything I want and I can get it out there. I mean, I'm not saying I am a representative of every single person, but in terms of philosophy, yeah. And I know that's not the case for many, like China, you can't do that, or Russia, you can't do that, right? But that's not so much as social media. That's just more, authoritarianism, which has always been a thing. Yeah, I think we definitely should be cautious of social media censorship, but I kind of am on the side of maybe that's a little overblown in terms of like, oh my god, my Twitter posts are getting taken. So what? I mean, I understand like social media enabled, but like, I mean, is it even like? I don't know, even having philosophical discussions on Twitter, is that even productive? When you could only, like, put only a certain amount of words on the tweet. I don't know. But yeah, the previous comment was, I think there's some yeah, basically you're saying, like, when you try to, put, uh talk about philosophical ideas and put them on the platform of politics, um, it doesn't work. But I think, I'm of the opposite opinion where, yeah, I think politics and philosophy should go to hand in hand, and I think there should be more of us debating, like, having philosophical discourses about politics, and I think it would be a good idea for us, to be more philosophical in our politics, and I think the fact that we're not so is like is why politics has kind of gone or have been in the garbage dump for a long time. So I don't know. I think you shouldn't separate, you know, philosophy with like other factors of life. Yeah, as much as financially backed journalists. Yeah, like for example, I just showed you this book. This won the Pulitzer Prize, which is a journalistic award, I think. Let me double check that. I think so. Yeah, journalism. And that book has a lot of controversial things about social activism and you know government acting badly. This is censored, but you can't put this on like social media, like Twitter or like you know once you start like getting into deep philosophical conversations, it kind of goes transcends beyond what you can really do on social media. So you know, but yeah, it just depends. It's interesting because I also know journalists. I know people who I have buddies who went to school for journalism. Now they work in the journalism field, and they get frustrated because journal now it's required for journalists to have a social media account. Like they must have a Twitter account. All journalists have to have a social, and they're like, why? Like I just want to like write article like in-depth articles. I don't want to have a Twitter account. It's kind of a waste. I understand it's a great way to get the word out, but they're like, some journalists I know, like they see that as like a hindrance. Like, I they have a Twitter account, but they're never on it. They just trying to get into the work of journalism. Right. What's going on here in the chat? Opinions on pop philosophy. Do you find that popular culture misrep- rep- misrepresents philosophers? Um, Not all popular mainstream culture. I just think the problem is like, it just depends on what's popular. Now, the problem today is, you know, uh, fascism is popular now, or white supremacy is the popular thing. Like being an incel, that's like popular now, right? So the problem is, that's like in vogue, right? Currently, which is really horrible, but it is, right? Anti woke, like when people, people use SJW, social justice warrior, as a pejorative, like that's an insult, like it's popular to do that when somebody tries to talk about social justice, like, oh, get your woke ass out of here. That's popular. So philosophers who kind of align with that kind of critique, they are pushed up, right? Because that's what's popular now. But maybe we'll get to a time where what's popular is social activism again, like in the 60s, for example. I know there was a lot of anti sentiment in that in the 1960s, but there was, the hippie movement and social activism. That was popular. right? Now it's kind of like the reverse, which is so I think that's why pop philosophy like is so dominant with this like anti woke sentiment. It's because that's the thing now. But it's not, so it's not so much the problem is not popular philosophy. It's just that whatever is what's popular now is what is pushed as philosophy. That's the issue. Philosophers are a problem for systems of all kind. It can be. Sometimes philosophy can be a problem in and of itself. Right? That's another thing. Right? For many reasons. One is sometimes it can get too steeped in academia, or they got those ivory tower wall academics. Uh, that's a problem, or it can get a little too abstract, or it can just be too Eurocentric and not, and delegitimize other philosophies that are not within the Western canon. So, philosophy can be just as guilty of damaging the world as any other, um, discipline. Um, you just got to be cognizant. Yeah, under capitalism, politicians are going to be product brand to sell. I would find it difficult to sell philosophy. Do you have any ideas? Uh, well, philosophy can be sold. Like you know, like Jordan Peterson, he writes books and he sells them. For and those books sell millions of copies, so he's making a lot of money off his philosophy. You could definitely sell philosophy. That's for damn sure. And does capitalism do that? Yeah, but there's plenty like I mean, shit. Look at Leninism, right? Which is a philosophy, and there's a lot of horrible things that happened under Leninism, right? But that was socialism. I mean, it was a different kind of socialism, uh, or Marxist Leninism type of stuff, where it's like, yeah, there's some good ideas from that, but there's also horrible ideas from that. Um, it's not just like capitalism that fucks up philosophy. It's just like greed or like being power hungry. Uh, yeah. Hello, Sean Havern or Havern. Would you be considered a pop philosopher? I don't even think I'm a philosopher, period. I'm a philosophy enthusiast, a philosophy hobbyist, but I'm not a philosopher yet. Maybe one day. Would I be a pop? I hope not. Although, maybe. Yeah, that's like pop star. Like, yeah, sure. I wouldn't have a problem with that because I like some pop music. So, sure. Uh, what could you? Oh, I lost my place. Philosophers. Who would be considered? Who would be considered a pop philosopher? Oh, I think I misinterpreted it. Oh, I'm sorry. I read your question wrong. Um, I thought you said would you be considered a flop? Okay, you're saying who would? Oh, like Peterson or like Ben Shapiro, Sam Harris. That's another one. A lot of these. Uh, there's this other one. I'll show you. Although maybe not so much. Oh, I plugged in again. Which I'm gonna put. This is a very popular book, but I think I'm gonna pretty much disagree with it. Here it is. What We Owe the Future. You might have seen this book. It is a book. So this is the philosopher. He's kind of a pop philosopher, I would say. I think it's his philosophy is called, yeah, long-termism. Long-termism, which is kind of like not transcendentalism. It's like the opposite of transcendentalism. But termism is this idea, in case you don't know, it's this idea that what's most important is perpetuating human survival. So the human species must, like, that's what's most important for the human species to continue to survive. Right. So so sometimes people have to suffer so that the human species can survive. So for Elon Musk actually subscribes to this philosophy. Right. Right. That's why he's all about like going to different planets, because he's like, we got to spread our species. That's very important. If we stay on Earth, we're gonna die out eventually. So we gotta be able to spread. But it's like, um, I don't know. I kind of disagree with like that's the most important thing. Whereas like what's most important is like social equity, and whereas they would argue like, social equity is important, but sometimes you compromise, you got to make compromises so like human beings can't prosper as a whole. Right, in terms of like the capitalist venture, like you're too busy trying to make sure everybody's equal, and you're not like focusing on like advancing the species, right? That's kind of like what longerism, but it's like, is it worth advancing the species when not everybody can fairly contribute to like moving the human beings forward? Like, I don't know. I would say like, well, if everybody can't equally contribute to that, then maybe we should die out. I don't know. That's how so it's kind of a philosophical thing. So there's a lot of philosophers today that are subscribed to that kind of philosophy. That's kind of like a popular philosophy today. Um it kind of goes hand in hand with the dog eat dog society, or like the hyper capitalist type of like, yeah, there's winners and losers, and we got a hustle culture. It kind of like goes along with that, where it's like, is it very also goes along with the anti woke thing, where it's like, you're too busy trying to like virtue signal, and we gotta like, focus on like, making human beings as great as possible. Right. And yeah, so I don't subscribe to that. So I would say this is like pop philosophy too, even though it's like really deep. But yeah. Uh, okay. I find left leaning philosophy more heavily pushed, even as someone who is left leaning. I don't know. I disagree with that. I mean, left leaning philosophy is pushed, but right leaning philosophy is pushed a lot too. I would say they're equally pushed. Uh, yeah, I would say that. I guess it just depends on the circles you're in, which is one of the problems with social media or the internet in general. They put us in these echo chambers, so we think like one side is being pushed more than the other, but they're both equally being pushed. We just exist in these echo chambers. That's the problem. Philosophers invoke truth, and many don't want to be held accountable. A lot of people don't want to be held accountable. Do all philosophers push truth, invoke truth? I don't know about that. You know, let's definitely don't want to put the rose colored glasses on philosophy. Right. What am I reading at the moment? You love my channel, thanks. I am reading, and I would definitely make a video about this. It's called the End of Policing, which is like a banned book currently. You can't in my state. Let me see if I can find. We're just gonna move around. It's fine around the house. We can do this. Go into this dark room so I can get the book. It's very dark in here. It's fine. I'm still here. No worries. Okay, we're going back. Okay, we're back. This is the book I'm currently reading. Oops. Now this is very like, if you're like one of those anti woke people, like, oh man, this is woke. The end of policing. This is about the idea like police um, are this. I'll just read it. Right. The problem is not police training, police diversity, or police methods. The problem is policing itself. Right. Right. Whereas, ju- maybe we should like abolish the idea of policing. Like, do police actually provide safety? Like, is that what they're actually doing? And if you look at the statistics and the history of policing, that comes into question. Right. If you and so I want to take that from a philosophical point of view, considering like also the real world examples and the statistics and it's not just going to be like a thought project. Is that we're going to be so I'm that's my this is my next video. It's going to be very interesting and probably going to get a lot of disagreements, but I'm going to use philosophy, but I'm also going to use a lot of real world examples, which that book does. Um, yeah, that's what I'm currently reading. I find Sam Harris to be an excellent philosopher for the most part, especially his debates about against Peterson. Okay. Well, okay. Well, I mean, it's cool that you like Sam Harris. I'm not. He's okay. And if you win a debate with Peterson, it's like okay, like that's easy. Congratulations, you have reached the bare minimum of what I consider, you know, critical thought. But that's cool. As a pop philosophy is writing that attempts to simply exist. Yeah, that's about right. um, Sean Havern, I agree with that definition of pop philosophy. Okay, cool. Got some introduction. Yeah, check it out. Let me see if I can find that book. Or did I get rid of it? I might have. Yeah, I think I actually did get rid of it. I didn't get rid of it. I put it in one of those little libraries. Yeah, it was like I had a Sam Harris book. It was called um, Letters to a Christian Nation. I think that's what it was called. And it was basically like taking what it did is it took like a lot of it just analyzed a lot of Bible verses, but it did it in such a it was out of context. It just was like very unacademic. It didn't consider like the context or the historical background or of the verses. I'm not saying that, you know, I mean you should do that, right? You should like really critique the Bible and there are verses in the Bible that are problematic, absolutely. But you got to be a bit more rigorous in your critique. I think you got to like kind of the book. It was very short. It was like a little like leaflet type of thing. No, it wasn't that. It was like I don't know, 50 pages or so. Uh, so already it's like okay, you're just gonna get the surface level critique. It was like this critique on Christianity, but I thought it was very surface level, and it wasn't. It definitely wasn't like it didn't have the academic rigor I would consider like uh, that I would kind of be like, okay, this guy is like he knows what he's doing. It's kind of like more like, oh, you just kind of took some verses out of context and you kind of like, you know, giving your 2 cents about it, but I don't know. I didn't like it, so the lack of social equity, human. Yeah, it's like if certain demographics die out due to lack of social equity, the human extension argument will almost certainly be made up of dominant groups. Yeah, that's what Firo is saying. But it goes back to what I opened the stream with about the Thoreau and what he was talking about about if you see, a man drowning, and if you wrestle the plank that he's using to to balance himself in the water, and you survive and he doesn't, right? Like you're just as dead as he is, right? The idea is, well, you survived, but it's like, did you really survive? You survived physically, but uh, what about your soul, right? As I'm sure like a lot of the long termism people don't acknowledge the existence of a soul. So, oh well, cool. What we talking about? Street police or the all the police? Yeah, street police. FBI, all of law enforcement. ICE, even uh, all law enforcement. Like if you and this book does a good job of looking at the entirety of law enforcement history, throughout the entire history. Um, and it really examines like, okay, what does law enforcement, FBI, CIA, all that stuff, uh, secret, what is it, the National Security Association, NSA, right? Street police, the police departments, all that stuff, right? And it looks at the statistics, and it looks at what they're actually doing, as opposed to what you're told they're doing, and it's like, okay, there's a conflict here. So if that's the case, how do we deal with this? Or like, what does that mean? And that's the philosophy that they get in. It's, it's very weak. I Okay, okay. Maybe I should have read something else. Okay, gotta go. Shan Hammond, goodbye. Cool. Happy New Year. Very fascinating. Okay, let me see if I go back to any other questions. Bread, butter, toast, still on. Can you describe your philosophy and beliefs? And do you ever plan on writing a book? Every time I think about writing a book, I read something that's like, oh, okay, well, that idea has already been explored way more than I was going to explore it. So the only time I write a book is when I see, i- an idea I have which has not been addressed. So far, I haven't found that yet. But one of my philosophical ideas, well, I talked about transcendentalism, where I'm really into the spiritual, where I believe there's things that are more important than the physical. Physical is very important, but that's not the end all be all. Right? And I also would consider myself a feminist, and so I would subscribe to feminist theory. And and I'm more talking about, like, I guess they call it third wave feminism, where it's more about uh, the acknowledgement of gender as separate from sex, two different things, related but different. Um, that is complicated, right? And the whole, like, it's a spectrum, and we're just beginning to understand that. And the whole idea of patriarchy and how that's damaging in society, and what do we need to do to combat that. So I would say a transcendentalist feminist is the philosophy I would say that I'm into. What would you recommend to read feminism? I have a whole list. I'll put it in the chat. I have a whole playlist. Feminism. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Uh, Here it is. Share. Copy. Feminist theory. Playlist. And check that out. And there's a lot of books there that you can check out um, that are good in terms of feminist thought. Okay, what other questions? If we have any. John's guitar lessons. Ooh. Oh, okay, he has no content though. It's stupid. I'm learning the guitar right now. I was just interested to see if you had any videos, but no. Oh well. John's guitar lesson asks, where do you stand with the likes of Marx or Nietzsche mostly? Where do I stand with the likes of Marx? Like, am I a Marxist? No. But Marx is cool. I like Marx. Uh, he has a very intelligent critique or explanation of capital. That's pretty cool. So if you want to like really learn about the idea of capital, then he's great, right? He's kind of like the person that really developed the critique of capital. There's a lot of Marxists or people who are like socialists who have barely read Marx, which is a shame because he got some very intelligent things to say about capital. I think he has a very intelligent critique. I think he's wrong in some things, and I think capital or capitalism is a very destructive force. I don't think it is the ultimate responsible force like a lot of people who are socialists identify. Like the problem is capitalism. That is the problem. I'm like, I would argue like it's more fundamental than that, and I would use like examples of, well, what about all the socialist states or like the socialist um, philosophies that also veer toward negative parts, and then they would say like, well, actually capitalism is corrupting those, and that's what's the problem. I don't know. I don't. So okay, Brian Duggan, goodbye. See you. Thanks for joining. And then what else you said? Nietzsche. Yeah, Nietzsche's cool. He's cool. I like him. I agree with a lot of what he's saying, and I disagree with what some of the stuff that he says. I do like his will to power concept. That's pretty cool. I think that is an accurate description of human nature, like this drive that human beings have for power or to enforce their will. I think that's kind of innate in everybody. And I think that's something that we need to like fight against. And I think some some people do well at that than others. But I definitely think like, okay, you had that right. Uh, I disagree with what the stuff he talks about in Beyond Good and Evil, where he's like, morality is something that we need to uh, transcend, and what we have to do is develop our own morality. And so, like, what happens then is you basically, what's happening now with the whole echo chamber situation, right? Where it's like, you develop your own ideas of morality in this bubble, and then your ideas of what's moral conflict with like people's right to exist, right? But you're not even aware of it because you're in this bubble state. Uh, so I think it's important to like acknowledge other morality, or ideas about ethics and morality, and in that way you expand your own idea of morality. So it's not something we need to transcend; it's something that we need to consider overall. And there's like multiple conceptions of morality that we all need to take into consideration. And I think Nietzsche kind of gets that wrong. Hello, glamour girl. I'm doing uh I'm on YouTube here. Just talking to my. Do you know? Yeah, I'm talking on YouTube live stream.
Oh, I know.
Oh, okay, okay. Just to let you know,
Yeah.
not to be like, what's he doing?
Doing
My wife just came home from work. Glamour girl, how were you able to do the St. Jude run this year? Nope, I did not sign up for that. Uh, what happened is I signed up for an ultra marathon, uh, but what happened is I wasn't able to do that because there was all these things that were going on. Basically, I needed to be somewhere else at the time. I need to take care of other things, so I was like, you know what, it's more important for me to take care of these other things than to. And then my daughter was also participating, which, and by me participating now is a bit too much. So what happened is I was planning on doing this ultra marathon, but it didn't happen. But that was cool. It still was cool. I'm gonna remove these spams. XXX69 online. My hot photo is here. Guess that's a bot. Yeah. What's your X-rated photos? 6'9". Okay, let me go to some other questions. Tips for reading Hegel? Sure. I'll just give you the tip that my favorite person on my favorite philosophy channel, which is Gregory Sadler, it's a philosophy professor, and that's my favorite philosophy YouTuber. He's pretty cool, and his tip was you should start reading. Basically, he said, first of all, he says like you can just read whatever. If you want to read Hegel, you can just start wherever you want. But if you want to like, he recommends if you kind of want some sort of ease into him, check out his lectures, which are notes made by his students, but it's still him. Like it's his lectures. So it's not like it's not him because some people will say like they're not worth reading because they're just notes from his students, but it still is him. So it's his philosophy of history and his history of philosophy. It'll be good to start there because when you start there, then you understand like his frame of thought and his you kind of it creates a good foundation or groundwork. So when you go to his more complicated works, you're like, oh, okay, I already understand like what you're talking about. Because is literally like his notes from his lectures. So it's kind of like if you were a student and you took you know and you were listening to him. So and then and then his books are kind of like, okay, now this is the upper class stuff. It's like kind of the graduate level work. So I would recommend that. Okay, bread, um, butter toast. Have a good meal. See ya. Are you in favor of Eastern or Western philosophy? I like both. um, it's interesting because some people don't like those terms, particularly Eastern philosophy. They'll say like, "Oh, you shouldn't group Eastern philosophy, which is like philosophies from Asia and the Middle East, and like basically anything other than Europe." uh, that's a kind of like Orientalism, they would say. But I'm for that because it's kind of like how I call myself the Black Ponder. It's like I'm highlighting like things that people don't think about. Right. So when you say Eastern philosophy, you're basically saying philosophy that's not part of like if you go to try and get a degree in philosophy, you're not gonna these Eastern philosophy is the stuff that you're not gonna learn about. Right. So I think it's useful to use that term. You're not like grouping it all together. You're just you're not diminishing it. You're just saying all right, bye bye. You're just acknowledging that there's different kinds of philosophy. Uh, so I like them both. What topics that branch out of philosophy do you most appreciate? Okay, so I said it before. I think what you mean is which branches of philosophy you like. Transcendentalism, which I talked about, and feminist theory. Those are the branches that I really appreciate. Hello, natural mint buckle. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I've already. Yeah, you've already here. Were you happy nice channel anniversary? Did you ever expect to be in this YouTube space for this long? Yep, I sure did. I didn't expect to not to stop. And I hope to be here 9 more years or more. Now, maybe YouTube won't be here, so whatever. I think there'll still be the internet will still exist, and there'll be some place where I can post videos. So, uh, yeah, I don't plan on going away, and sure, I definitely was expecting to be here this long. Basically, everything that's happened is what I expect. No surprises. Okay, I think that's all the questions from John's guitar lessons. Okay, I'm interested. Thank you for cool. Okay, I think this is our final set of questions. Nadia Marianne or Marianne, butchered that name, but I know this is all a long time subscriber, photographer. I will answer this question. Uh, It seems like over the past year, your thoughts have changed a bit on anarchism. I remember your video on Emma Goldman text, and if I remember correctly, you seemed a bit skeptical about some of the points. Fast forward to the Chomsky video, and you seem to be in agreement with much of it. Would you be interested in outlining your progression with anarchist philosophy? What changed? What is your position at the moment? Have I changed? Okay, let me bring this back. I don't think I've changed. Have I changed? No? Yeah, I remember with the Emma Goldman, she was, the idea, we should have no government. There should be no government, no state. There should be no states. Yeah, one fundamental concept of anarchism is this idea like state power is like one of the ultimate is a boogeyman. It's like the ultimate problem. Kind of like what socialism is like capitalism. That is the ultimate. If we defeat capitalism, then then we have a basis for improving. I don't know about that either. But like, is state power the ultimate problem? I would say no. I mean, you can power can, power is susceptible to corruption. Whatever power, state power, it could be like tribes. Like let's say like you have a little small community and like you have the tribesman, the chief who has power. He could abuse his power as just as much as like the president of the United States can. It's just power. It's not like and not I'm not saying like states are that's ultimately like extremely good. I'm not like a state cheerleader. Like yeah, I believe in states, but like there's lots of problems with state power, but is like that ultimately the problem? I would just say power is the ultimate problem, right? But it's like, but at the same time, it's like yeah, you could just get more fundamental with that and say like, well, actually, human nature is the issue. So the thing is, like, we just have to be cognizant and aware and have regulations and limitations, and we just gotta always keep a watchful eye on things. And, I do think government is good in some cases. Right? I'm not like anti-government. not in the sense, and I'm not saying like anarchistic, like, there should be no leadership and no responsibility. You, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is there government in the sense like there should be a government body uh, taking leadership. I think that is particularly when you start getting into um, when organizations get bigger and bigger and bigger. Uh, Let me just check the chat to see if I'm missing anything. Okay, so I'll keep going for now. Yeah, but there's a lot of things that I do think anarchism, the philosophy is very good. There's some great ideas that are awesome. But there's this idea like, oh, there should be small, very small community organizations or groups, and that should be like the highest form of um, of power. And then if you want to work together, then you can create like some sort of federation thing, which I don't know. When you start talking about that, then you're basically talking about government at that point. There's just some problems that require like large ass organizations. Right? Like you can't get around it. Like a lot of scientific, like I was admiring, for instance, the James Webb Telescope, which was launched by NASA and several other organizations, scientific organizations, and they you can see a lot of beautiful images from outer space. Things like that require like large organizations, multiple working together, and you got to have like some sort of governing body to that's in charge, right? Or like when 2019 when we first had the image of a black hole for the first time, which was cool. Like that requires like a global effort. So you got to have some sort of governing body. I mean, take for instance, uh, like uh, like climate change, right? In an anarchist situation, right? And there's a lot. Not to pick on anarchism, but then I haven't changed. I haven't changed. Um, in the anarchist framework is like, because we know, like, science has shown like we got to reduce the level of fossil fuel that we're using. We need to start doing that, right? And that needs to be global. So we need to do that globally, right? So, but if it's an anarchist thing, right? It's like, well, what's going to happen is like some communities are going to like, oh, we're just going to use fossil fuel, period. Oh well, and then I mean, that's happening now, right? but but in an anarchist framework, is like, okay, some communities are going to not use fossil fuel, and some communities are going to use fossil fuel. And the ones that decide to use fossil fuel are going to hurt everybody. And in an anarchist framework, there really is no way to address that issue. Right? Whereas, like, okay, no, we need to like create like a governing body that's going to like, uh, put the foot down to be like, no, we are going to agree that all groups are going to reduce fossil fuel emissions or usage. And if you don't do that, then there's going to be some consequences, right? And the government has to be in charge of that. So there are just some things, I mentioned like abortion, for instance, where it's like um, this idea, I would even say like something like that in an anarchist framework, right? It would be like, okay, some societies um, are allowed to, they have decided that abortion is just wrong, and they're just not going to do it. But but what about the people within that society who are like, well, no, I disagree with that. As opposed, like, I think, like, for example, something like abortion, That should be something that should be decided like at the top, where it's like, and I'm pro abortion access, so it's like, okay, you might have this idea, you might think like it's okay, like it's murder, but we have decided as an entire society, the governing body, that it's like we should allow people to have abortion. Like that wouldn't, I don't see how that could work within an anarchist framework, right? The things like that, where it's like, um, so I don't think I've changed my position on anarchism, but there are some good things. I'm just not a like an absolutionist, I would say, or like somebody who subscribes wholeheartedly to one single thing. That's just like the capitalism versus the socialism argument. Is like, there's good and bads on both sides. Not, and you say that, and then people who are like really hardcore into socialism are like, oh, that's hearsay. And it's like, well, no, actually, I there's a lot of good things about socialism, but there's not everything about capitalism is bad. A lot of it is, but not all of it. And I think we can merge the two, right? And just like with anything, anarchism is the same way. There's some great ideas in anarchism, but there's also not there's some things that are like kind of problematic, I would say. And so we take the good parts and we incorporate it with the other, with like other forms of governing, and we create something new. I don't know. That's how I feel. Uh, is there anything else? What would you say to Marx if he showed up on your doorstep or something? Well, Marx had this whole prediction of, eventually, um, capitalism is going to result in a revolution of the proletariat, right? Uh, capitalism will, force people to the point of where they just revolt because it's so exploitative. Um, it's just gonna force people to revolt. It's funny because I know Marxist Leninist people who still have that whole idea of like eventually we're all gonna just revolt, like this whole like kind of like twiddling their fingers, waiting and waiting, wait. It's gonna happen. But I mean that's not gonna happen, right? And I would say like, okay, Marx, when is this revolution you're talking about gonna actually happen? Because capitalism has resulted in things like Netflix, which people love, and like uh, people binge Stranger Things or like the show Wednesday. That's capitalism, or like the iPhone, for instance. Like people are, that things like that capitalism brings about, entertainment and media and tech. uh, it quells like people's like desire to revolt. You know what I'm saying? So I would bring that up to Marx because Marx was like, it's inevitable. It's going to happen eventually. People are going to revolt because the pressures of capitalism are eventually going to be too strong, and people are just going to be driven to revolt. The masses will revolt, but like that, no, right? That's that kind of prediction. So I would question him on that. Like, okay, so when's that going to happen again, Marx? You said that what 150 years ago, so it's still not happened yet. Whenever, okay, okay, and then with AI advancement, government may be very different for each of us according to the programming. Oh, really? Whomever has access to establishing, managing AI. I suppose so. Yeah, I think. I mean, AI is definitely a threat, but sometimes I think that's. I mean, artificial intelligence is definitely something that could be used for, and it is used for very negative things. But I think artificial intelligence is another one of those boogeymans where people are like, "Oh no, AI." And it's like, well, no, it's actually it's the people that are writing the programs. It's the people behind the AI. For example, with China, they use AI. The Chinese government uses AI extensively to control their masses, but it's not the artificial intelligence. It's the government itself. That's the problem. Likewise with, like, social media, where they use artificial intelligence to create these algorithms to just create more commodities and profit at the expense of people's privacy. And people are like scared about the AI, but it's not the AI that's I mean, it's just a tool, right? The problem is the people that are running the corporations. That's the problem, right? So I don't know. So I think when people get fixated on AI, it's kind of a distraction where it's like, you're not really correctly analyzing the problem. Uh, and so, like, you're talking about government with AI. I would say, like, it's less to do with AI. That's the issue. Is more just incompetent governance, right? Right. That's what we need to kind of focus more on that. Do you think Marx would be into Netflix though? I don't. Who knows? I don't know. Who knows? Uh, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my initial response would be like, no, because he would say like, well, this is capitalism. But at the same time, he he used Frederick Engels, who was his buddy. Who Frederick Engels owned like a business. He was a family businessman, and he used like Karl Marx used a lot of Frederick Engels like um, family business to like publish his ideas. So I don't know. He might be really so he used a lot of capitalist ventures. Marx did to publicize his ideas, right? Uh, so he might use Netflix to like critique capitalism, which is kind of that whole Hegel contradiction thing, where it's like you use capitalism to critique capitalism. That whole like dialectic. So I don't know. He might be into it. Oh, thank you, Ahmed Bashir. Congrats on 9 years. Thanks. What's your favorite work of Russian literature and why? Well, my favorite novelist happens to be Russian, and his is Fyodor Dostoevsky. Yeah, that's my favorite. I love his work, his works. That's my favorite novelist, and he's Russian. And I love Crime and Punishment. I love the Brothers Karamazov, and I'm going to do the his other videos of his other works. Oh, if I can reach. Okay, did it. The Idiot, which I think this is sort of like what they call those allegory of the life of Jesus, apparently. So he's Fyodor Dostoevsky is a Christian philosopher. So that's cool. Yeah, I gotta get back into, and I also have some of his shorter works, like Angels and Demons, I think it's called, and The Underground something, which I haven't read yet. But yeah, I gotta get back on that Dostoevsky train. Oh, Engels was the Netflix of the 19th century. I mean, I don't know if he was that, but he was really into the publishing business. Right. So I don't know, man. Sometimes, I mean, I understand, like, because I'm often like, I think about Marx, and I'm like, yeah, but he used capitalism to push your ideas through like Frederick Engels. But a lot of people will say like, well, he had to, like, he didn't have a choice, right? He had to. And it's like, I don't know, would that have been possible without like capitalist venture to do that? Uh, yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, has anybody got any other last minute or final questions for me, or is it time to end the stream, which is totally fine. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything. I was just looking through again. I might have missed anything. Let me know, and I will happily answer your question. Just looking through here. Yeah, but you can't get out of the water without swimming. Right, right. Yes, right. Uh-huh. That's true. You can't get water to water without swimming, right? Because we live in a capitalist society. So we have to participate in capitalism, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's, you know, uh, good. I don't know. I just think about things like, I think about like the smartphone, which is a great tool. Like, and I find it hard to believe that the smartphone could not have been created without the system of capitalism. Right. Uh, I think they could have used capitalism in a more equitable way, of course, because a lot of what are these iPhones today are like almost close to $1,000. But how much are they, how like how much do they actually cost to make, right? Probably like a few cents. Right? So that's wrong. But if they made it more equitable, I think it would be cool. Yeah, I might be like cynical. I might be cynical, but I do think like people kind of do need like a draw, like kind of a push, or like some people are not lazy, but a lot of people are, and I guess that maybe as personal experience, capitalism kind of gives you this incentive to do things. Now, I know many people be like, well, you don't really need a incentive to create. I know a lot of people that do. I know a lot of people who would just be sitting. I know people right now who are just like, whatever, who cares? But you give them like some sort of goal to reach or some sort of like prize, and they're like, oh, I'll do it now. Right. And I think there is that aspect that people don't want to admit that humans have. Not all humans. Some humans will just do things just to for the sake of the good. But I think some humans do need that incentive. And in that case, I think capitalism has its usage. But yeah, that late stage hyper capitalism where it's just gone too far. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, and I do think if you do not rein in or like regulate or limit, it just that's anything though. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's anything. Like anything to the extreme is going to be bad, right? Socialism is, I would argue, it would be the same. It's like socialism is great, but if you like push it too far, it becomes what communism, which we've seen that with the USSR and you know communist China. Not today, because China today operates a lot. Even though they call themselves the Communist Party, there's a lot of capitalist venture going on there. But the days of Mao, that there was some aspects of that which were good, but a lot of that was horrible, right? The famine and such, because it was taken to the extreme, right? So I don't know. I think that's more about like I'm a big believer in regulation and limitation, and like I just feel like innate, human. beings when we don't like practice discipline and control. If that doesn't happen, we can do some fucked up shit. So, yeah, so I think discipline and control is important. What's my favorite film? Do I have a favorite film? Oh yeah, of course I do. Um, the one with the puppet. I don't know. That's a great film. She said The Dark Crystal, but that's not my favorite film. But that's a great film. Dark Crystal. My favorite film is not philosophical at all. It's like it's this side of me that I like. I like kind of generic movies. My favorite film of all time is this movie called Assault on Precinct 13, the original one. It's John Carpenter's first film. John Carpenter is the director. I think he made Halloween, the guy with the mask, Michael Myers. But before that, I believe that's the guy. He made Assault on Precinct 13. And it's about, in case you don't know, it's about this gang that just, uh, uh, so what happens is this gang is like, it's kind of like a cult, like it is a cult gang, right? Where they're just like, and it's multiple races. It's not like a racial thing. It's like all races are in this gang, and they're just like this crazy cult, and they just kill just people randomly. And one of the leaders of the gang kills like just a little girl randomly, and the father flips and he kills, and so he goes to the leader and just kills the leader, and that sparks up like, okay, we got to take out this guy that killed our leader. The guy runs into the police for the precinct and just huddles in the precinct, and so the gang goes on full assault mode like zombies, trying to break into this police station to get to this guy who killed their leader. And it's kind of like this tower defense thing. It's not philosophical at all, but it's like the action and the music is really good. John Carpenter has some great music. It's awesome. The action scenes are awesome. I like good action scenes. Uh, and it's kind of retro too. And also, like when this movie first came out, the idea of silencers. So you put a silencer on a gun to make it like more quiet. That concept first came out like then. Like that was still like a brand new concept. So they were getting shot at, but they couldn't hear the bullets. So they're like, "What the hell's going on? We're getting shot at, but we can't hear the guns." And it's like, "Oh, it's this new technology. It's called silencer." Right. So it was kind of like this. It was kind of like this Dawn of the Dead like zombie thing, because these people were so morally adept, this gang, that they were just trying to just kill, and they would just go in there blindly and getting shot up, and it was crazy. Film is crazy. That's my favorite film. It's not a philosophical movie at all, though. But I like those kinds of movies too. I like movies with good action sequences as well. Made this made by State Research. Look it up. It's super interesting. Yeah, no, I mean it's a technological marvel. I understand, like also smartphones today, they just document all of your data that you use, all your private data, and just send it to the government. Like I get that, like that's bad. But also just I just marvel at it's like a computer, like a supercomputer. It's interesting how like the same computer that we sent to people to the moon. It's like the thing that we have, the computer that we used to send the first people to the moon was like the size of a house. And now we got this thing that's in our pocket, and it's like, hundreds of thousands of times more powerful, and it's like in our pocket. And then we have access to like the entire information of all the world, right? Of human. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just a marvel. We got these mega computers in our pocket. Uh, it's quite interesting. developed by state research. Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting. So it's good and bad. And embrace the freedom, true anarchy worldwide. So you're an anarchy. Oh, I see. Anarchy television. You're an anarchist. I agree. Self disciplines. Yeah. Yeah. So I just joined. I'm trying to get more active social activism. So I joined this group called Food Not Bombs. It is an anarchist group. They go by anarchist um, uh, leadership. The way they run is an anarchist way, and they operate very well. They operate very well. The way they make decisions and how they put Food Not Bombs. So Food Not Bombs is an organization that feeds like people in need, but it's not just that. It's all types of other stuff that they do. They try and one of the other things that Food Not Bombs does, it connects other social activist groups together to build like a network of mutual aid in the community. And it's a global organization, but since it's an anarchist organization, there's different chapters all around the world, and each chapter is independently run. So there's no like overarching government, um, leadership, right? Is independently run. So it's great. And in that way, like anarchism it's that's the great anarchism. I'm really into that. So that's how I got involved. So I know a lot of anarchists now. Some of my good friends are anarchists. So I have nothing against anarchism. It's cool. I just think like it doesn't have the answers for everything, and some of the things I think if you go by everything that anarchism lays out, you can run into some issues, which I've said before. I should look into quantum computers. Oh yeah, I I'm familiar with that. Because currently computers are running with the semiconductors, transistors, binary, whether that's represented with 1 0 or on off. They're just switches, on off switches, right? So it's the on state or the off state. But with quantum is like it's more states than that. It's not just off state, on state. It's not just it's like, there's many different states. So you can do calculations at a much faster some kinds of computations can be done extremely fast, right? Because you have more states to work with. So yeah, that's interesting too. What's the worst thing you do with the mega computer in your pocket? Me personally, uh, I don't know what I do. Or do you say what is in general? What do people do? Me personally, I don't know. Sometimes I surf the internet when I'm like in line, which is on the internet, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because I'm just trying to pass the time. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm one of those people. I don't really. Some people they'll be like, I have to turn my phone off, or like during these hours, I turn my phone, or the phone really distracts me, and I can't focus with it. Like I don't really have that problem. I don't have that issue. It's gonna buzz and notify. I just ignore it, or it's gonna like push ads, and I just ignore them. So I don't know. The definition of anarchy is no masters, no rulers. Yeah, I've been told that. It doesn't mean there's no rules. The rules are natural common law. Yeah, but no masters, no rules. Yeah, I've heard that. Um, but the definition is more than that, right? And we go, and I talk about that in my video with Noam Chomsky, which you may or may not have seen, where he actually gives a very detailed definition of anarchism. It's not a complete definition, but it is a really deep definition that is more than that. Right. I'll link it in case you wanna, in case somebody wants to see it who hasn't. But I saw that one and I'm like, ooh, that's I read that because we also have a reading group in our Food Not Bombs, and that was the reading group essay. And I'm like, oh, this is good. Uh, what is anarchism? I don't know. Yeah, from my understanding, no, not all anarchists subscribe to Noam Chomsky. Some anarchists feel Noam Chomsky is problematic. So there's kind of this debate of, some people don't like, some anarchists don't like Chomsky. But I thought that essay was very good. But I'm somebody who doesn't consider themselves an anarchist, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But I do. There are anarchists in the Food Not Bombs group that I'm in who really like Chomsky. So there's that. Was he a socialist? Is he a socialist? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it, because I know he's very left leaning. Opinion on the United Kingdom? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's cool. United Kingdom look cool. I have no problems with United Kingdom. It sucks here. Oh, that's too bad. Well, it sucks here in the United States of America too. Yeah. I mean, I'm thankful because I do have somewhat of freedom of speech. I know some countries like China, for instance, or Russia, I couldn't be so open mouthed about my politics. So at least I can still do that, thank God. but but it's not like, it's still pretty bad here in America. So I hear you. It's bad in the United Kingdom, it's bad over there. But I don't I I'm not I'm not against England, Britain, and Scotland. I love the conversation. Cool. Yeah, that was great. Okay, I think that is all. Uh, yep. So if there's no other questions, or if you just, if you don't have to have a question, you just want to have a comment, that's cool. We can talk it through. I know you love the conversation, but it looks like the conversation is about to be over. But I'm always online, because I have a smartphone. I just don't let it interfere with my life. But you can always comment on one of my videos, and I'll, as you can, if you look at my videos or you look at the comments section, usually I reply back. Uh, so you can, I'm not going anywhere. Hit me up. I'm on the several social medias. I'm also just started doing Tumblr. And on Tumblr, I post quotes from the books that I'm reading. So you can, if you want like to do that, I'll put that link. If you would like to follow me on the Tums, you can read along with me. So if you're like, I wonder what he's reading right now, that's a great way. I don't know why I don't do Goodreads. I'm lazy. That's what it is. I have nothing against it. I'm just lazy. Mhm. Oh, there, if you want to like read along with me while I'm reading. But you've been watching the Black Ponder. And I thank you for joining me. And next year will be 10 years. What are we gonna do then? I don't know. Maybe I'll introduce some musical playing. I'm starting to get good with the music. But until next time, I'll see you later. And thanks for joining. Peace out. Bye bye. Sayonara. See ya.